If you would love to know more about how you can use blogging to help you grow your health and life coaching business, or perhaps you already have a blog but you're just not being consistent with it, then my guest on the show this week is perfect for you. I'm interviewing Danielle Gagnon and we're talking all about content planning, whether or not blogging's still relevant, and much, much more. Let's dive in. Hi Danielle, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. It's so lovely to have you here. Would you like to start off by just telling everyone a bit about yourself and your business?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, my name is Danielle Gagnon. I am a search engine optimization specialist and basically, take care of all forms of SEO content for my clients and teach my clients how they can really strategically create content using search engine optimization strategies. So, short version of sort of like how I got here is I've been in this space in one capacity or another since 2013. That was when I was working a 9 to 5 marketing job, but I already had the entrepreneurial bug and I decided I was going to start a blog. My dream scenario, I was going to start this blog, I was going to make lots of money and quit my job. It did not happen in that order, but I did start the blog. I made a little bit of money, not job quitting money, but some. And the biggest thing for me is that I discovered SEO. And so I actually joke that chicken tikka masala taught me everything I know about SEO because I had this, it was a food blog, and I had this one recipe that ended up ranking at the top of Google. And that was sort of when I realized like, oh, how did I do this? I need to figure out how I did this so I can do it again. And yeah, I started using SEO in my 9 to 5 job. And when I started my business back in 2018, I knew that I wanted to help other business owners learn how they could leverage SEO to really grow their business and reach more people. So
Yeah.
that's the short version of me.
Amazing. Oh, and that sounds like we've got quite a bit in common because I was an OG blogger, like back
Oh,
in, I think I
nice.
started my blog in 2010. So, yes, and I did some recipes and they did really well. In fact, I still think I get found on Google for things like energy bars or there's something like random like
Mhm.
that I still get found on Google from. So yes, so it sounds like we've had a similar a similar start with all of this. But yeah, and just to let everyone know who's listening and watching, you're going to be talking specifically about podcast SEO, which I think is going to be a really fantastic topic on my event, which will be starting on I think it's the 16th of June, which is called Search and Connect. So I'm really, really excited for you to talk about that. And I think a lot of other people will be as well. But today we're going to chat a bit about SEO and blogging, more specifically in content planning. And obviously, I think content planning is not just blogging, but I'd love to talk a bit about blogging since we've also got that shared background as well.
Yes.
It's very relevant, isn't it? So I suppose a big question, and I mentioned this before we kind of got started, is a lot of people have been asking me these days, I think with the platforms like Substack and Medium and obviously every other place that you can go and create content, is blogging in the traditional sense, and when I say the traditional sense, like a blog on your own website, is it still relevant? Do you still feel that there's a role for creating blogs on your own website when it comes to marketing your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it definitely, like, the world of blogging has obviously changed so much, especially like, yes, thinking of those sites like Medium and Substack and all of
Hmm.
those places, but also, of course, like bringing AI into all of it. Like,
Yes, of
there's so
course.
many questions. And I work with lots of bloggers and, they're all asking those questions as well as business owners who are blogging. They're all questioning their lives a little bit. But I honestly believe that there is definitely still a place. And obviously I'm a little bit biased. Like this is what I do, but I feel like I'm biased because I see that it's still working, right? So I am a big fan of things that you own, like content that and a content hub, I would say, right? Like having a home for your content that you own. And really when you're posting on social media, when you're posting on something like Medium or Substack, yes, that is getting you attention and it could get you a lot of traffic potentially, but it's still not really a place, it's not a place that you own, right? It could go away at any time and you really have no control over that. And so I think that having content, having long form content, especially whether it's a blog, a podcast, video content that can be stored in a site that is truly yours is one of the best things you can do for your business. I mean, all of those other things, posting on those other sites, social media, it all has a place and a part. It's like a cog in the wheel of business or whatever. But at the end of the day, all of those things really should be driving traffic back to the thing that you own, right? Your
Yeah.
website. And I don't think that blogging is going anywhere. I mean, it continue to change and shift? Yes, 100%. And we don't even know what it will do, right? Like no one can give a definitive answer, but I don't think it's going to go away. I mean, even with AI, I know lots of people are worried about like, oh, the AI overviews in Google, like
Yes.
are people
Yeah.
even going to be clicking through to blogs? Those AI overviews are created because of blogs and they link out to blogs, right? Or
Yes.
to
Yeah.
websites in general. So you still have to create the content for even those things to exist and work. So yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think we do just have to pay attention to the shifts and try to like shift with the times.
Yeah. It's like everywhere, really, isn't it? I think every single, obviously thinking about the fact that we've been around in the online space for a while, by the sounds of
Yeah.
it, every platform really has shifted, hasn't it? And
Mhm.
blogging's no different, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like in 2013 when I was starting to blog, there were people being like, "Is blogging dead?" And
Yes.
clearly
Yes.
it hasn't died yet. So
Yeah, that's a good reminder, isn't it? There were people asking that question a long time ago, and it's still here.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I'd love to just run over, like for you as well, just the reasons why you still think that blogging is relevant and is worthwhile. And I know, obviously we're going to talk about just people being able to discover you and things like that. But, for you, what is making blogging still a relevant form of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things that happens when you blog, or again, really create any form of that like long form content, it really just lets your potential clients, potential customers get to know you, right? I feel like if you've done any reading about marketing whatsoever, you probably hear about the know, like, and trust factor, right? And long form content, blogging, podcasting, etc., that's one of like the fastest, easiest, shouldn't say easy because you have to create the content, but it's one of the best ways to allow people to get to know you, to start to like you and to trust you, right? To be able to showcase your expertise, the fact that you have all of this knowledge and this background. And at the end of the day, no matter what niche that you're in, no matter
Mhm.
what kind of service you offer or product you sell, there are people out there actively looking for what you do, right? They're actively looking for that service. They're actively researching about a problem that you can solve for them. And if you're just posting on Instagram, like, yes, you'll reach some of those people, but you're going to miss a giant proportion of people who are on Google or on any other, maybe they're even in ChatGPT, right? But they're asking questions, they're researching their problems. And the kind of content that they're finding, whether they're in Google or whether they're in ChatGPT or something like that, it's typically not social media posts. It's
Yeah.
going to be that longer form content that they're being directed to. So if you're not creating that longer form content, then you're just like, you're going to miss out on tons of people.
I think it's a nice reminder, isn't it, that this kind of content has still got a lot of potential and a lot of really good outcomes for people when it comes to your marketing. And I think we were always going to cheerlead for blogging. I think when we were both kind of original bloggers and we can still
Yeah.
see the benefits to it. So when it comes to people getting started with it, and I know where a lot of my kind of people in my community get stuck is where do we even start when it comes to
Mhm.
what to actually blog about and how do we make the blog strategic, but also so that it's not kind of like, you know, I think most of the people in my community don't necessarily want to sit on ChatGPT as much as they do use it and create like reams and reams of content that doesn't really say anything. But how would you suggest people get started with the kind of idea of just planning where to start with the content itself and the ideas?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about and to teach because I think it is like the most common sticking point. I mean, literally, it's like what stops people from getting started because they're like, I have no idea what to even talk about or what to even
Yeah.
write about. And I actually think that it can be pretty darn easy to figure out what to write about when you put search engine optimization strategies like at the beginning of your process. So the way I like to think about blogging is we are reverse engineering all of our content based on what people are searching for.
Yeah.
So I like to do keyword research, so figuring out what people are actually searching for. What are the questions they're asking? What are they researching? I like to say, what are your target audience like late night Googling and crying? That's what I always
Yes,
like
yeah.
keeping them up at night when
Yeah,
they're
some
like
people
on their
Googling at
phones in
midnight, isn't
bed,
it?
right? What is that problem? What are they like? What are the symptoms they're experiencing? And it might be like literally health symptoms, or it might be like, why won't my baby sleep? Or why does my puppy keep biting me? Which is what I've been Googling lately. Um, it's right. It's like no matter what you talk about or what kind of content you're going to create, there are those like burning questions, those research items that people are looking for. And so when we can figure those out first, then you can just take what you know people are looking for and create content that aligns with that, create content that answers their questions, that talks about the things that they want to read about. And you're not having to sit there and be like, okay, what do I feel like writing about today? So it takes that guesswork out of it, but it also just becomes far more strategic because what you might feel like writing about today might be nothing that your audience is actually looking for. It might not
Yeah,
align with their questions at all because we have to remember that like we are subject matter experts, right? And our audience is typically not. And so we really do
hmm
have to like put ourselves in their shoes. And that can be hard to do when you have all of this knowledge. You forget what it was like to not have all of
yeah,
that knowledge. And so doing that keyword research to like actually figure out what people are searching for is absolutely like the first step I recommend
yeah.
that folks do.
Yeah, and where would you kind of get started with that? Because I know there's different tools that you
Yeah.
can use for keyword research, but have you got a favorite that you would like that you tend to
Yeah.
use?
So there's a couple ways that I like to do this. So yes, you can absolutely use like an actual keyword research tool, and I'll recommend one in a minute, but
Mhm.
there's a lot you can actually just do inside Google itself. And I always like to recommend this stuff first because it's easy. You don't need to have any special tools. You don't have to have any special knowledge. The number one thing I would say is go to Google. We've all done a Google search, I'm assuming. And when you start typing something into Google, it gives you that like drop down of what it thinks you're searching for. That's what we call like predictive search. So what I recommend is whatever your sort of core topic is, do a search for that. So let's say you're, I don't know, a health coach for women, right? So maybe you type in health coaching as sort of like your core phrase or something that relates to
Yeah.
your business or your core service. And then you do what I call keyword research alphabet soup. So you would type health coaching or whatever your phrase is, then you'd hit the space bar and you'd type A. And then Google will give you a drop down of a
Ah,
bunch of ideas. So it might be like health coaching assessment, health coaching academy. I don't know, I'm thinking of A words,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
It's going to
yeah,
give you a bunch of things that it thinks you might be searching for. And you can do that for the whole alphabet. And very quickly, you're going to see tons of phrases that will start to generate ideas for you. And the reason this is effective is because Google does the predictive search based on like commonly searched phrases.
yeah,
So while you're not getting any data on how many people are searching for these things, you can feel pretty confident that if Google is suggesting them to you, it's because lots of other people have searched for them. So really, really quickly, just using that predictive search tool, you can get a big list of like phrases that people are searching for that can start generating those ideas for you. So that's first step. Another really good thing you can do within Google is again, just do a Google search for some sort of phrase related to your business, related to your core service or product, and then do like the full search. So let's say I was doing like health coaching for women and I searched for that. Scroll down. Basically, every Google search these days will have what's called a people also ask section where there's
yeah,
questions. And you can, each time you click on a question to see the answer, more questions will pop up. So again, in like 10 seconds, you can
yeah,
get a list of 30 questions, and they're not always all of them, but most of them are super relevant to what you had searched for. And so really, really quickly, you can get this big list of questions that people are asking related to your product or your service. And these are super helpful for content ideas. Maybe it's a deep dive answering just one question, really
yeah.
in depth. Maybe it's, a few related questions all put together into one longer form blog post. You can just get tons of ideas from this and really
Yeah.
get good insight on what people are searching for and what questions they're asking. So yeah, those are two of my like earliest or like first steps for sure.
Yes. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and it obviously just takes out the if for people who aren't that tech savvy or who kind of get a bit scared of the idea of using a tool, it's just really
Mhm.
accessible, isn't it, to do it that way?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And if you want to use a keyword research tool, I mean, that's really effective as well. I usually recommend key search for beginners, but honestly,
Yeah.
like I'm not a beginner and I still use key search all the
Yeah.
time. I love it. It's so simple. They have a free version, but even their paid versions are super affordable.
Hmm.
And the way key search or any keyword research tool works, you type in sort of your core phrase again, and it's going to give you related keywords and it's going to give you actual data. So that is helpful
Yeah.
when you're actually, especially when you're actually going to write the blog post or create the podcast or whatever it might be, to be able to actually see, okay, which of these phrases has the most searches, is, not super competitive, gives you the best chance of hopefully ranking on page
Yeah.
one of Google or as high as possible in Google's and you can get some really good ideas from those
Yeah.
kinds of tools.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So that's kind of the first step that you would do in planning out all of those different topics. And then when it comes to actually creating the content, have you got a process that you use? Do you kind of, are your clients use? Is it kind of creating something on like a regular basis? Or because I think this is again, a question that a few people have had for me recently is it all right just to write loads of things and publish them all on the website all at once? Or do they need to be dripped out? Or does it matter? It's like those kind of questions that people get hung up about and aren't sure about.
Yeah, so if it's a brand new blog, like you've
Mhm.
never blogged before, whether
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if your website's been around forever or if the whole thing is new, but if you've never really blogged before, I do like to batch at least like 5 posts, like
Yeah.
5 to 10 posts, I think, getting those published, essentially all at once to get
Yeah.
a good chunk of content in there, I think is great.
Hmm.
After that, I would say doing at least once a month. And I try to
Yeah.
keep it really realistic. Like, yes, if you
Yes.
could blog every week, that'd be amazing. But most business owners cannot commit to that.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't blame them. I can't do that for myself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and this is literally my job, and I still don't do it for myself. So once a month, I think is generally realistic, but
Yeah.
also enough that you're getting, good content on your site every month. You're signaling to Google and other search engines that you are active, that your
Yes. Yeah.
website is consistently being updated, and you're also signaling to humans, right? Like there's nothing worse than when you go to a website and you see like, oh, the last time they blogged was 2022. Like, are they even still in business? Like, is
Yeah.
this, it makes you question a little bit. It could have the best information, but it still makes you question a little bit if they've gone months or a year without blogging. And I think sometimes when we tell ourselves like, okay, I'm going to blog every single week, we might
Yes.
do it for a month or two and then you kind of get burnt out
But
and
no,
then
yeah.
it takes forever to get back into it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say get a few posts up there to get some content going and then once a month is realistic, but also a perfectly good amount of content for most business owners.
Yeah. And I think that's really reassuring for a lot of people because again, and I know at one point with certainly with like the old school blogging, I think there was bloggers who were like posting 3 times a day at one point. It was like
Yeah.
really
And
crazy.
there are still people that do that for sure.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
most of them are using AI these days, I think, to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think many people are actively doing it themselves anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a balance. I would much rather see folks post less frequently, but post really high quality, in-depth content that is like
Yeah.
strategic, that's based on what they know their audience is searching for,
Yeah.
than posting every day or every week, even if it's just like going to be a quick, like AI written thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I mean, talking of AI, because I think like obviously it's relevant to everything now, really, is in business in some way, shape, or form. But how do you see kind of AI impacting blogging and the process of blogging and the process of content creation and planning? Kind of what have you seen as been the trends and how do you feel about it personally as well? Because I always think that's quite an interesting question. Some people are like, so, it's can be quite polarizing, can't it, as well?
It can. It's hard. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it
Hmm.
because I'm a writer by nature. Like I grew up loving to write. I was a
Yeah.
journalist before I worked in marketing. And so writing has always been like this huge part of my job. And so in some ways it makes me really sad to think that like someday there might be a day when like we're just not writing anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
literally just the robots. But that being said, I think it can be such a helpful tool. And I do use AI in
Yeah.
my business.
Hmm.
I like to use it primarily for like planning and helping me like put together all of my ideas in an outline. Something that I will very often do is I have sort of like a template that I use for myself now where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, here's the keywords for a blog post. Here's the top 5 ranking pieces of content for that keyword right now.
Hmm.
Here's like the people also ask questions that I want to answer. Here's the AI overview for this topic and like some other things. And then I'll give that to ChatGPT and say, like, incorporate all of this into an outline for me. And that's
Yeah.
something that I would have done myself before, but is like the perfect example of something that can be done much faster with
There's
AI
time. Yeah.
while still like you're still doing the research and the background work to know that, it is what you want it to be, but you're saving some time that way. And I think for people who truly have very little time, like I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI to actually write your first draft, but I do recommend always going in and editing it, adding your own unique thoughts and expertise, both just because I think that's important,
Yeah.
but also because Google and other search engines, like one of the biggest ways that they're sort of trying to, I don't know if fight back is the right word, but like trying to really focus on human created content is
Hmm.
by focusing a lot on like firsthand experience and expertise. And they're
Yeah.
looking for signs of that in your content. So making sure that you are giving it that personal touch, even if some of the writing or that first draft is done by AI is really important. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere. I don't see
Yeah.
the human race suddenly being like, you know what, we want to get back to writing
Yeah.
more. We're
We're gonna
gonna,
shut off
yeah,
all of the
never
robots now.
mind. This is a mistake. So I think we do have to like embrace it to some extent because it will probably only become, well, I shouldn't even say probably. It will definitely only become a bigger part of our lives as time goes on. So I think just using it strategically in ways that are, ethical and don't like take away from your expertise and your knowledge.
Yeah. So we've kind of covered like a bit of a almost like a content planning and creation process there, haven't we? You've talked about you know how to come up with some titles. You were suggesting there about using just Google's own kind of predictive search, which I think is like
Mhm.
so easy and straightforward for people to get started with. You know, aiming for once a month, which I think is so doable for most people. Not being necessarily afraid to use ChatGPT a little bit to get you started. And I think that, something you were saying earlier as well that I thought was really interesting when you mentioned like people having their own expertise, and I know that a lot of the health and life coaches that I work with, especially at the start of the business, they kind of question that about themselves and question if they
Yeah.
are actually experts. And I think it's really interesting how this process of blogging kind of like opens people's eyes up to the fact that they are actually, and I mean that's something that I found just with my podcast and YouTube channel and blog that I do, is that the process of actually having done 170 odd episodes has kind of made me think, well, yeah, actually, maybe I do know something about this
You know a
topic.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Um, so I like that you highlighted that because I thought it's kind of a good reminder that the process of doing this, even using ChatGPT to get you started, can be especially helpful if people are a bit blocked at the start of that content planning
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I really like about blogging for a business is it just gives you so much content to then recreate or to then repurpose, I should say,
Hmm.
into other
Hmm.
things, right? And
Yeah,
when you create long form content, whether it's a blog or something else, all of that short form content, that social media, the email market, like whatever it is, that all becomes easier too, because then you
yeah,
can just take that content, the long form content that you've put all this time and energy into, and create shorter pieces of content based on that. And that is actually one of my favorite ways to use AI. If I've put all this time and energy into this long piece of content, I know it has the voice I want, I know it has the information I want, I know it has, my expertise in there, whatever it might be. Then I can say, okay, hey, ChatGPT, GPT, take this piece of content, turn it into 10 social media posts, give me 10 reel ideas, give me
Yeah.
an email newsletter that encourages people to go read the blog, right? You can then use a tool to turn it into all these other things. And if you've sort of trained AI to like understand your voice, and obviously it will
Mhm.
analyze the blog post, it generally does like a pretty darn good job of
Yeah.
repurposing that content for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that long form content just makes like every aspect of marketing easier. I think especially when you sort of use that as your foundation
Yeah.
for all of your content planning.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And when you content plan as well, do you have like a specific way of like managing those ideas? Do you have like, do you use a planner? Like, what does that look like for you as well?
Yeah, so usually I am a very simple person, I would say. I am like a big Google Sheets kind of person. I have,
Yeah.
some of my clients we use different tools. I'll usually use like whatever they're using to plan. So, using something like Monday or Asana or ClickUp, like all of those
Yeah.
sorts of tools can be really helpful. But I am a big fan of just like making a spreadsheet in Google Sheets, putting all of the ideas in there. I like to do it that way because, I can just drop the keywords or questions that I know I want to create content around. But then you can also add like keyword lists once you've done the keyword research for each post.
Yeah.
Leave notes for yourself. Like it's just a very simple way. And pretty much everyone has Google Sheets, I would say. So
Yeah.
it's again, you don't need like any sort of fancy tool. And yeah, I mean, you're going to get tons of ideas from doing the sorts of exercises
Hmm.
that I was talking about. And I
Hmm.
think then it's just a matter of sitting down, thinking like, okay, what elements of like seasonality is there in my business? How
Yeah.
do these ideas like fit into different times of year? So, for health coaching, I'm sure there's a lot probably around like holidays and start of the new year, right? There's
Yeah.
probably like some summer specific things, right? There's going to be some ideas that make sense to do at certain times of year. And then beyond that, I usually sort of map that out first. And then beyond that, I just sort of think like, okay, which of these topics is going to best address like the most common questions I get asked or the service that I really want to sell the most and sort of do those strategically so that I get that content up
Yeah.
as early in the year as possible so that it has time to start doing its thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that makes, and I'm glad you mentioned the seasonal side of things as well, because that's so important, I think, is thinking about the ways and like the questions that people ask, do other things that people are focused on, or the priorities that they've got do shift around the year, don't they? I remember I don't know if you can remember this, but there was a big trend for something called hygge. And it was like it's like the Danish word
Oh,
for
yes.
well-being.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it says hygge, but it's hygge.
Yes. That's why I didn't recognize it at first.
Yeah, yeah. And I can remember I did a blog post on it back in like yeah, I think that might be in 2017 or 18. And that's one of the ones that like or it will tick up September.
Yeah.
It will
Yep.
tick up every single year. And it's kind of like, that like it's kind of gone down over time as it's not
Yeah.
as much of a trend. But that brought me like that blog post must have brought me like thousands and thousands of views over the
Yeah.
years. So it is like it can, and obviously it has changed blogging. It's, what I think certainly for my blog, I used to get hundreds of thousands of views every year, and that's definitely not the case anymore. But I blog about
Yeah.
different topics, but you don't necessarily need to have like masses of traffic. I know I had someone else on the show talking a bit more about like general SEO. And I think it was a good reminder that you don't necessarily have to have, like hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
views on your website to still get good results.
Especially as a business owner, like it's one thing if you are, I work with a lot of like full-time bloggers where
Yeah,
this is the way they make money, right? So
yeah, of
they are
course.
much more concerned about
Yeah,
trying to get as much
because it's
traffic as
ads, isn't it, for them,
possible
isn't it? Yeah,
because
like
they
ads
need
and stuff.
ads, yeah,
Yeah,
they need the affiliate income, like all of that stuff. But if you're a business owner blogging, you do not need massive amounts of traffic to have
yeah,
like really transformative results. I mean, if you think about like how many clients you'd want to have in a month, I would guess for most people,
yeah,
especially if you're a solo business owner, it's really
yeah,
not that many, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so knowing that you have the potential to reach hundreds or even thousands of people a month, like your ability to get the amount of clients that you need it like becomes way easier
yeah,
able to reach more and more people, and then it gives you opportunities too to do more of like the one to many, right?
yeah,
Courses, all of that sort of stuff. If you have that audience, it becomes easier to sort of scale your business in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think that's been really interesting. And like I say, just a nice place for people to get started with if maybe they already have a blog, but they're not very consistent with it because of that planning side of it and kind of getting all like, well, what do I blog about? Or someone who's new. Thank you so much for sharing all of that process and those ideas. That's really, really helpful. And like I say, come along and listen to Danielle speak at Search and Connect, all about podcast SEO, which I'm personally really excited about that because I don't know absolutely but go all about that. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about that. But would you like to finish up and just tell everyone where they can find you online? We'll put all of the links in the description as well, so you can go and find Danielle.
Yeah, definitely. The best place to find me in the social media world is definitely on Instagram. That's Danielle Gagnon _SEO. And then my website is Danielle Gagnon SEO. And that has, all my contact details and all of that. But yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, which is still not that active, I will admit. But
Yeah.
I at least
Me
respond to
too.
messages there.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much, Danielle. That's been awesome. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.